Okay, five, four, three, two, one. What's up, everyone? You're tuned in to the Healthtastic Experience. I am your host, Dennis, and if you don't know what Healthtastic is, I recommend you check out our first episode. I'll drop a link down below in the description. So what we do in this podcast is we talk everything about health, wellness, fitness, nutrition, everything health related, basically. So today I'm joined by my co-host, SP remotely. So say hi to everyone.
Hey man, hey guys, what's up?
So how's it going? Like what have you been up to?
Oh, as you know, it's been a rainy day today. Really cold in the office. It's like they don't really control the AC. Just keep it the same, like full blast, even when it's not like thermostat control in the office. My God, it's cold.
Yeah, it's still raining here as well. If
Yeah.
you guys don't know, then SP is in Syria. I'm in town in Bandar. So we're doing this remotely, and so like yeah, myself as well. I've been pretty much trapped at home because it's raining, and as you know, it's like quite near to Chinese New Year. There's a lot of errands to run, and most of you guys who know us, you've heard about us talking about this as well in episode one. Is that we just habitually discipline ourselves to do 10,000 steps every day. So I've just been pacing around the house, and it's not really an issue. Rain or shine, we still get it done as well. So just a bit of light exercise, Yeah. So how about yourself? Any
Well,
workouts?
well, I got my 10,000 steps done in the office actually before I even got back home because I looked outside. It's like, yeah, might be a chance that I won't be going running today. So you see, you adapt to the situation, right? You
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
Well, you can tell yourself like, oh crap, it's raining. Let's Looks like I'm not gonna hit my 10,000 steps. Or look at it, it's raining. Okay, let's do something now, man. You know. But then
Yeah.
after that, right, when I went back, I looked at it. Okay, it stopped raining. Strapped on my running shoes. Opened the door. Crap, started drizzling again. Okay, got my windbreaker. Went out there, have a run. 5Ks. Whatever, man. You just do it.
Yeah, so for me, what I do is I usually, especially when I'm like stuck at home, I just put a timer for 10 minutes and just walk around the home and until
It's
the
not
timer
that
rings.
difficult, huh? It's not that
Yeah, I
difficult.
think it's about 6-10 minute sessions and pretty much done.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
so
I've timed myself to do 1,000 steps. It only takes about 8 minutes or less.
yeah, yeah.
So it's not that difficult. Times 10, that's it. You're done. It's not
Yep.
that difficult.
Anyways, if you're tuned in to us for the first time, make sure you subscribe. Hit the subscribe button so that at least you don't miss out on any future episodes. So we're gonna talk about a lot of health stuff, and who knows, some of it might be beneficial to you. And we post most of our daily stuff on Instagram, so you get a lot of health tips and whatnot on Instagram daily. So if just follow us on Instagram, the handle is right there, and you get so much beneficial stuff that you might benefit you personally and also benefit your friends and family. And so today we're just gonna go right into it. We're gonna talk about simply one topic, one word: sugar. So we're gonna talk about sugar and how it affects actually how it how it may hinder your weight loss and how it may make worse your someone who has type 2 diabetes or someone who has like pre-diabetes, and how you can slowly wean off it, like just based on some of the advice that we're gonna share with you today. And also you might be wondering actually, like, these two guys actually, what how are they qualified to actually give us like nutrition or fitness advice? You know what? Honestly, the truth is, we're not really fitness experts or like nutrition experts. It's just that we've done so much research online, so much YouTube videos, hours on end, and also so much reading. So we're pretty much just the messengers in terms of the knowledge that we want to share with you. And I feel, I'm sure SP agrees as well, that this is like a very good place for us to sort of put all our knowledge, everything we've gathered over time, and sort of put it in an area where it kind of benefits us, us as well because we get to regurgitate that information and everyone else gets to benefit as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not. It's true that we do a lot of research, so there can be a difference between doing a lot of research, right, and also doing it in practical, right? Is you study the theory when you read, you study the theory, then after that you gotta put it to work, right? And we've done both. Whatever we've read, we put into practice, and
Yep.
whatever works, doesn't work, we know, right? And we look at the science behind why this doesn't work, why does that work? We look at the science behind it. So yeah, but we are by no means expert, like what Dennis says. We are just the messenger. So take everything we say with a grain of salt. Do your own research. Don't believe everything you hear, even if they come from experts.
Yeah, because even for us, we are in a continual process of just learning, and I think in the in this about health, it's just never ending learning. So we just constantly make sure that we are loading up on information and never assume that whatever we know is actually 100% correct. So we are constantly learning. So we hope that you will join us in this journey. So we'll just get right into it. And this is what we want to talk about. So I'm sure everyone has seen this. So this is the food pyramid. And I mean, where do I start actually? Because when you look at it, we want to talk about the food groups. So we have carbohydrates, which is at the bottom of the pyramid. Let me bring out the pointer. So we're looking at the bottom here is like grains, bread, cereals, like for Asians, and we eat a lot of rice. So this is like the carbohydrates part, and the fruits as well.
Yeah, that bottom bit is like the widest, and that's what most people consume the majority of their calories.
Yep, that's right. And then as we move up, you can see that actually you're getting towards the dairy part, and after that you reach your proteins. And what is very interesting to us is that you see here fats, oils, and confectionery is like uh, eat sparingly or occasionally, right? So, but the funny thing here is actually since the introduction of this food pyramid, which we just accept wholeheartedly that is correct because it comes from like millions and billions of dollars of research that we just assume is correct, and then we get taught this at schools as well. But what happened when it was introduced in, I believe it was like in the 1960s, is that I will bring up this chart very quickly and to show you actually what happened. So as you can see, it says obesity trends in the US after introduction of food pyramid. So,
When
I
was it
mean,
introduced? When was it introduced again?
early 60s, I think. Early
Ooh,
60s.
okay.
So before that, we were perfectly fine. But why this? I mean, what happened here actually? So people just followed this food pyramid, and then after that, obesity just went out of control, and diabetes as well just went out of control. So is this really correct what we're following?
That's insane. It doubled. More
Yeah.
than doubled.
Yep, pretty much more than doubled. So, and what's interesting as well, when you look at this, it ends in 2010, and we're approaching 2020, and it looks like it's exponential when you just like extend this graph.
Yeah, I think if you extrapolate it, it will actually go a lot more exponential.
Yeah, so
Most
a lot of people might argue, yeah, maybe obesity is worse in the US. Actually, no, like in our country as well, I believe obesity is like, or overweight is, the statistic is 1 out of 3 in Brunei. And I think similarly as well in Malaysia. So neighboring countries, we're all pretty much looking at the same thing. So don't just look at it and say, oh, maybe this is just in the US. But no, now everyone's following the food pyramid, and I believe they still teach this in school, like food pyramid. So when you see this, right, you can't help but question, okay, there's something wrong with this, right? People are eating, they are recommending you to reduce your fats and then also increase your like grains, like carbohydrates, right? And I think there's a preconceived notion of why fats is actually put on the top here. So we have no qualms about confectionery or sugar or whatever on top here. So sugar is naturally like it's not good, right? So but fats on top here and then also grains at the bottom here. So we got to start questioning actually what's going on, you know. So it and I've read in a book somewhere that so we've been reading a lot as well. So one of the pioneers or people talking about um, more of a low carb diet is someone. His name is Dr. Fung. You can look at him on YouTube, and there's a reason why they put fats all the way up here because fats is very calorie dense. So we all just seem to assume that weight loss is just about calorie in, calorie out, but it's simply not that simple actually, right? Weight loss it's not really calorie in, calorie out, and the traditional way of thinking, which is like to eat less and move more, just simply doesn't work actually. If any one of you who have seen The Biggest Loser on TV, they have you see the people that they lose a bunch of weight. It's like 100 plus pounds. But what they don't tell you is that actually 99% of the contestants, after they leave the show, they gain back more weight than they did before they joined the show. Actually,
That's
um,
so
yeah,
you can Google that. I actually looked. I've seen that report where there's a majority of them is gain back the weight. Sometimes they go back to their original weight, and sometimes they even gain more weight than they started the show.
yeah,
So what they do in the show is, in a nutshell, right? It's eating a lot, eating small. I think eating regularly, and then working out like crazily. Actually,
mm,
right? So you can see that that method is, yes, of course you're gonna lose weight, but what's the point if you suffer all through that, through all that suffering, right? You lose the weight, then after that you just gain it back. I don't see
mm,
the point, honestly. Yeah. So we want to find something where it's a more stable. I'll even take slower weight loss. I'll even take
mm,
slower weight loss, but it's more sustainable, right? Because you don't want to go through a diet. So that's why most diets don't work, because a diet is calorie restriction in a short period of time, right? Once you hit your ideal weight or whatever your target, right? Then after that, what happens? You're off the diet, you're off the hook, right? And after that, you go crazy again. Then after that, the vicious cycle continues. This is what happens, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
And
what people need to
both
understand,
of
right,
us
is,
we've gone through that before as well.
yeah, more times than I would like to imagine.
Yeah,
Right, we tried it all. We tried it all, right? So
that's right.
what with regards to what you were saying, right, is that is correct. Fats and oils, the reason why it's at the top, right, is because I think when they came up with this is like what you said is very calorie dense. Like if you look at just pure calories alone, right, a small amount of fat in terms of, if you look at equal calories of fats compared with, let's say, carbs, right, is the carb volume would be a lot more compared to, you know, the fat volume. So that's why they said consume a little bit. But what you need to understand, right, is because confectionery, right, essentially is like candies, essentially is sugar, right? It's at the top. Yes, you should actually consume very little of it. That is correct in that sense. However, what's what the point is, in the bottom, right? It's bread, cereals, potatoes, basically carbohydrates, right? What what our listeners need to understand, right, is carbohydrates converts into sugar in your blood. So there is not much difference actually, right? If you consume a lot of carbs, you're putting a lot of sugar into your body.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely correct. And when you're looking at, I believe I read this in a book as well recently. They're talking about like doctors, they always recommend a low-fat diet, and they are essentially kind of like contradicting themselves because they know actually that carbohydrates, excess carbohydrates or added sugars in food, they get turned into fats, and that's what clogs up your arteries. It's not actually eating fatty foods, right?
Yep, it's actually eating too much carbs, and the carbs convert into sugar, which converts into fats. Actually, it converts into triglycerides. So if you're looking at cholesterol, that's a portion of the cholesterol, right? That is the damaging part.
Mm,
That's the only thing that you should be concerned about. And it's not the fats. If you consume healthy fats, that's fine. Trans fat is another, yeah, it's bad. But if you're talking about like animal fats, butter, those things will not clog up your arteries. It's simply
So
false.
I would recommend everyone to just look into, because they start to categorize fats, and there is some truth to this. So you hear of polyunsaturated fats, and after that you hear of like that's the better ones like olive oils, and after that you hear things like butter or like animal fats. They categorize as like saturated fats, and then they tell you that that kind of stuff, right, is the stuff that clogs up your artery. But doctors know that to be not true, actually. It's just simply not true. And the fact that they say that cholesterol clogs up your artery is absolutely not true. And we will not go too much into detail about the science of it, since we're not doctors. So we just read this and don't shoot the messenger, and you want to do more research, we highly recommend you to look more into like saturated fats. Because think about it, back when our ancestors lived, they didn't have access to like refined sugars or processed foods, right? They ate butter, they ate cream, they ate animal fats, and do you hear of people living thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, having like heart diseases? No, it's just happened recently, and especially when this new trend of eating low fat came out, right? Somehow heart diseases just spiked. Like, how do we explain that?
That's a strange correlation there. Suspicious.
Right? So don't take everything as it is. Start to question things, and I mean, think about it. If you were to get better by just eating properly, like through the right nutrition, then doctors would have no jobs anymore, right?
Yep, that is true.
They're just medicine salesmen, I mean, like with all due respect to all doctors out there, they get taught whatever they know now, and I would just recommend anyone to question things, because back then we knew certain nutrition knowledge we thought was 100% true, but as we did more research, we dug deeper, and there was so much more to this actually, and we're still discovering new things. So look at this food pyramid and maybe think about turning it upside down actually.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if this didn't work for people to help people lose weight, wouldn't turning it upside down actually help people lose weight?
Something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to blow our listeners' minds, because this is like really unconventional knowledge. But we're just here to help you get started with whatever research you want to find. Who knows? You might even find more interesting knowledge that may benefit us as well, benefit you and benefit everyone else actually.
Well, maybe unconventional is the way to go, because the conventional way is making people sick. It's not working.
That's right. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to this this food pyramid?
No, I think the biggest takeaway is just remember, when you're eating carbs, it turns into sugar, right? So if you know that sugar is bad, sugar is highly addictive, which I think carbs are addictive as well. And I think it's more of a mental thing, because when I tell people that I don't eat rice, and they say like, how do you function? It's like, what do you mean, how do I function? It's like, you don't need it as much as you think you do, right? It's only your brain telling you that.
Yeah.
Of course, initially there's adaptation processes and things like that, but you can live without it, because we have gone like without carbs sometimes for like weeks or even months if you really wanted to push it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we have like a cheat meal here and there, but on a daily basis, we don't need carbs, because why? Your body can produce sugar. You don't need carbohydrates at all. So that's the main takeaway, right? And then fat doesn't make you fat. Well, healthy fat doesn't make you fat, right?
That's right. I mean, we just want to, since we're on this topic as well about healthy fats, I want to urge our listeners to actually start to look into saturated fats, unsaturated fats, and even vegetable oils. And sometimes the word vegetable just sort of makes you think that it's healthy. But vegetable oils, right, didn't really become mainstream until quite recently, like in the last century. And that's the reason why is because they have only found economical ways to extract oil from like seeds and vegetables. But there's a lot of chemical process that's being needed to make it into whatever you buy in the supermarkets. Whereas if you're looking at butter, animal fats like lard and things like that, it's it's really really close to the source. There's very little processing to get it to where it is when once you buy it off the shelf. So
Yeah,
I would highly recommend look into that.
I think I think the way to really think about it, right, is the less processed it is, and the more close to the natural source that an item is good for you, right?
Mhm.
So the less they mess with certain things, like let's say vegetable oil, because they have to go through a lot of chemical processing, right? That's in general, those things are bad for you.
Yep.
But when you look at things like butter, right, it comes directly from the cow. So even better, right? If the cow is grass fed, then that is the best thing that you can get,
Hmm.
because our ancestors ate that. Our great grandparents ate that. So they cook with lard, they cook with butter, and if they were to die before that, we wouldn't even exist, right? We wouldn't even be born. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly.
just think about it. So just go back and think about how people used to live, right? Because they have so little diseases. You don't hear of all this like strokes or like heart disease and all that diabetes. It only came about recently. And why? It's you just gotta go back to the way that they were eating or what they ate, and not so much of the processed crap that we have nowadays, and
Hmm.
a lot of the sugary stuff that is so readily available, like empty calories,
Yeah, yeah. And since we're pretty much want to flow into this topic as well, like I believe really what hinders people from losing weight or have like hesitance in terms of like how whether or not they want to actually commit to losing weight is actually the lack of knowledge. So when you lack knowledge, then that makes you hesitant to really endeavor in anything, actually. And I remember we were having a chat with our health coach, Madam Sawana, and she reminded this of us as well. And she talked about how why people become obese or why they have type 2 diabetes is just simply down to lack of knowledge. They don't know how to eat or what's going on in their body, what's happening in their body as well. So, and we've talked about this very briefly, I think, in the earlier in this podcast as well. So that we want to talk about how it's not just as simple. Losing weight is not as simple as calorie in and calorie out, right? What we realize is actually people doing that, calorie in, calorie out, and then they restrict their calories, they normally lose weight initially, and after that they just see themselves rebound, right? So it's clear that it doesn't work for the majority of the people. It just doesn't work, and
it works for short term, but it's not sustainable, and it doesn't work over the long term. And that's
mm,
where I think you can enlighten our listeners a little bit more on how it's more hormonal rather than just calories in, calories out, you know.
mhm, yeah. So we want to talk very in depth into insulin, what insulin is actually. So I think just to start from the beginning, what happens when you eat sugar? So when you eat carbs or like bread, rice, noodles, and when you consume that, obviously you're eating it for sustenance and for you to release energy for your body to use. So what happens when you just consume bread, sugar, rice, anything carbohydrates, is that your pancreas will start to produce insulin. And how I would relate that, insulin is pretty much like a key, right? So it opens up the cell. So this is what a healthy cell looks like. So the insulin is like a key. So it opens up the cell and it allows actually sugar to go into your cells and actually to produce energy, through mitochondria and things like that. So I don't want to get into the technicalities. Yeah. So this is what happens when in a normal healthy cell of a normal healthy individual. So every sugar is converted into is being transferred into the cell and used as energy. But what happens when we overconsume carbs or when we overconsume sugar? You're drinking a lot of like pearl milk tea, like kopi C, teh tarik, and you're really just overwhelming your body because the fact of the matter is in our body there's only one teaspoon of sugar in our entire bloodstream. Do you know how crazy that is? Just 1 teaspoon. You can survive with just 1 teaspoon of sugar in your body. But what happens when you eat like a bowl of rice, It's like somewhere along the lines of 5, 6 or more teaspoons of sugar. So you're essentially just overwhelming your bodies. So our bodies hasn't evolved to a point where it's able to process all these refined sugars that we find in foods nowadays. So our body has been, the DNA makeup has been the same like since 10,000 or like 1,000 years ago. Nothing's changed. But the food we find in the supermarket, that's changed massively. How they produce, how it's been GMO'd, and how they've had so much added sugars in there. So you're just overwhelming your body. So what happens when you eat that much? So your pancreas, you're going to overwhelm your pancreas. So it's going to produce like a ton of insulin actually just to deal with that sugar actually. So what happens is, yes, it will open up the cell, but to the point where it's not effective anymore. So look at this cell actually. Not much glucose gets into the cell. So that's why when you have like a heavy lunch or heavy dinner, you just feel like very lethargic actually, because what happens is your pancreas is producing so much insulin, you get something called insulin resistance, right? So how I would relate this is, think about, let's say a family brings their baby on travel, and they are in like a very, very noisy environment, let's say in the airport. But somehow you see sometimes the baby can just sleep through it, like in a very noisy environment. But how come like overnight when there's just a creaking floorboard, the baby will just wake up? So it's in a sense where when you're producing so much insulin, like the body is like kind of resistant to it already, right? Think of it of like, also I can explain it like antibiotics as well. Like the more antibiotics you eat to sort of curb or sort of fight bacteria, somehow the bacteria is smart enough, right, to resist that antibiotics. So it's the same thing with insulin as well. The more and more it produces, right, the less effective it is in your body. So what you have now is you're really screwed, because now that you have a lot of insulin, not just insulin floating around in your body, but you have a lot of sugar also floating around in your bloodstream. And this is when you do blood tests, you get high blood sugar, this is what happens actually. So you're not able to produce energy properly now because of insulin resistance. So this is what happens in your body. So we just want to help people understand actually what goes on in your body when you eat too much sugar, and how you don't even need to eat that much sugar or that much carbs to produce energy. Yeah?
And this
Does that make
goes,
sense?
yeah, and this is actually how type 2 diabetes is contracted, essentially.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
When you have too much blood, you have too much sugar in your blood, because the insulin is not responsive to, to convert this sugar, to put it into your cells to be used as energy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right.
So that's actually, well, a lot of people, when they look at type 2 diabetics, right, they treat them for the high blood sugar. Well, the high blood sugar is a symptom, right? It's like somebody who has fever. You don't treat the fever, right? It's most likely it's like a bacterial infection that causes the fever. You don't cure the fever. The fever is like the symptom. You cure the root cause. What was causing that fever to break out in the first place, right, is most likely it's bacterial. So what do you prescribe to them? Antibiotics, right? So in this case, right, when most people treat type 2 diabetics, right, what do they give them? They give them medication to actually reduce the blood sugar in their bloodstream. They're not really fixing the root cause. And this is what a lot of people don't understand.
And in extreme cases, they actually shoot them up with more insulin.
That's crazy. That's like pouring gasoline on the fire.
Pretty
when you
much.
want to put out the fire.
So it will work for a while, but exactly like what SB said, you're pouring more gasoline on the fire. So we want to treat insulin resistance actually. And what causes insulin resistance? Too much sugar. It's that simple. And somehow the American Diabetic Association says that this disease is progressive and untreatable, right?
Wow.
So we know personally from ourselves, because our mom was living with diabetes for like, I think 10, 15 years. And she's been off her medication for about 4 months now. So what we're passionate here is to help other people achieve this same thing actually. And it's so simple. It's just lack of knowledge, right?
Hmm.
So this picture is inspired by like I said, Dr. Fong as well. So this is how he describes insulin resistance to normal people who don't really understand the science of it. So what you see here is actually in Japan during rush hour. They actually have these conductors on the side of the rail to shove as much commuters into the trains as possible. So you can see that these people, this staff, right, is essentially like the insulin. So they're trying to cram as much sugar, in this case the commuters, into the train, which is the cells. But somehow at some point it just gets saturated and the sugar just flows in on the outside, on the platform. So this is what it is actually. And when you have that much sugar floating around in your bloodstream, I won't get too much into this, but essentially it makes your blood absolutely toxic, and it singles out diabetes or type 2 diabetes as a disease where it actually ravages your entire body, right? It's worse than anything else actually. So it makes no exception. It attacks your blood vessels, your organs, your skin, your eyes, everything. It just attacks everything. And that's why you hear people having amputations, or they have a bacterial infection that just won't heal. That's because the blood is toxic when there's sugar running through it. Yeah. So maybe SP, you'd like to take our listeners through like what this is, like insulin resistance.
So I think where it starts, right? So this is a vicious cycle, right? So insulin resistance is essentially is you eat bad carbs, or well, any kind of carbs, or you eat too much of it. Then after that, your body makes insulin to deal with those carbs, right, which converts into sugar. Then after that, like what Dennis says in the previous slides, right, that the insulin, the key, right, required to unlock the cell to put energy or sugar into the cell, right, becomes resistant, right? So no matter how much insulin your body produces, right, it's just not effective, right? So what happens is the sugar floats around in your body. It gets stored as fat, right? Because like what Dennis showed in the previous one, right, when you cannot shove any more into the train, right, what happens? It floats around outside, right? You're not on the train, right? It floats around outside, and then after that, somehow, I think your liver can convert it into fats. Am I right?
That's right. I think I just read about this as well just now because there is unlimited storage in your body for fats, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right? So if it doesn't go into your cells and be used properly as energy, then there is surplus. It's just simple math. So when there's surplus, right, your liver will convert it. If it can't store it around your liver, which leads to like they call it non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So your liver just gets covered in fats, and then after that, when it cannot store it on your liver anymore, it just stores it as subcutaneous, which is like around your skin. And also, when it gets worse, it stores it around your organs, like around the abdominal area. This is what they call visceral fat. So this is what in Healthtastic, this is what we aim to help people to improve, is to reduce their visceral fat, which is not as easy as exercising to get rid of.
That is correct, actually, because I see a lot of people who do exercise, right? They barely cut their visceral. They only cut probably their subcutaneous fat, which is the fat that's just right under the skin. Those fats are easily burned, actually. Like even if you do like hardcore dieting, it's actually quite difficult actually to get rid of the visceral fat because it builds up over time, you know. And then so the listeners might be thinking like, why is the body so like stupid to be able to store all this unnecessary fat? Well, actually, it is a survival mechanism. Think about it. Let's go back. Let's go way back into caveman era. They didn't have access to food as much as we do right now, so which is part of the problem. Because right now is like when you feel hungry, right? Just a few steps, you can get some food. You know, vending machines, restaurants, whatever. Food is readily available, right? But last time in the caveman era, right? If they didn't hunt, they didn't eat, right? So what happens when they didn't have food, right? They ate a lot. they eat a lot sometimes so there are stages of where they're feeding, right? And also there are stages where actually there's famine, right? They not to say starve, but they don't have things to eat, right? So this is where the stored fat comes in, right? So this relates to fasting, which we probably will cover, not extensively right now, but we'll cover in the future, I think, right? So this is what happens actually. That's what's supposed to happen. But if you're already storing fat and you eat more, right, it's gonna store more fat, and you never access those fat stores, right? So going back to this again, right? So sugar stores as fat, right? Then after that, now you there's hormonal changes into your body, right? Where you know after you have a heavy meal, right? Then after that, you feel lethargic, you feel tired and hungry again. How can you feel hungry again? It's like you just ate. But that's what we feel, right? Actually, there are hormonal changes inside the body that triggers this actually, right? So this is what happens when you eat a lot of carbs. You carb crash, and then after that, oh crap, I want some more, right? But you're already storing a lot of energy into your body, which is not being used. So this is how obesity and also like weight gain happens, because you keep eating and you're not burning the sugar, not sugar, the fat that's stored in your body, and that's crazy.
Yep.
That's the mechanism of weight gain, pure and simple. Actually, it's just a vicious cycle.
So insulin is essentially the hormone that's guilty of like storing excess sugar as fat. So if you're having a lot of insulin floating around in your bloodstream, that promotes fat storage. That's just how simple it is.
And that prevents fat loss.
Correct. So as you can see, it goes back to, once again, eating a low carb diet. It's as simple as that, actually. All right, so we'll go into the next part, which is you can look what this is essentially this when you're looking at this chart. So we're talking about hormonal, how weight loss is hormonal rather than caloric. So what this is actually you can see how these three major food groups incites insulin reaction in your body. So what you can see is when you eat a lot of carbs is that the insulin. So the bottom part here is essentially the timeline. So it's over time. So when you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, it spikes your insulin, which promotes, once again, fat retention. So fat gain, weight gain, or fat storage. So when you're eating a lot of rice, sugar, all these carbs, so this is what happens. And then shockingly,
that explains why you get a sugar rush, yeah? Because insulin floods into your bloodstream, and then after that converts all that sugar, all that carbs into energy. And that's why you crash very quickly as well after that.
And then what was shocking to us as well was that even proteins, eating your meat, chicken breast, whatever, eggs, it still spikes insulin reaction actually in your body. So you're still experiencing some sort of insulin, reaction in your body. So you're still storing fat to a certain degree and preventing fat loss. But shockingly, look at what happens when you eat fats actually. It doesn't incite insulin reaction at all.
It's almost negligible compared to carbs. It's like how many times less.
Yeah, so now you're thinking to yourself, eating fats actually promotes fat loss? I know how crazy that sounds. It used to sound crazy to us as well.
It sounded like, what?
Yeah, like fat doesn't make you fat. Fat actually makes you lose fat. So I know it sounds crazy, guys, but I would definitely encourage you to look into this. There is a lot of truth to this, and this is scientific, right? This is not something we made up, right? This is like, it's been out there. So what happens when you want to lose weight is you want to treat whatever is causing the weight gain, which is insulin produced by your pancreas. And you want to prevent this from happening is you have to look at carbohydrates and protein, how it how it produces insulin still. But when you're eating fats, it just doesn't, make a big reaction. It doesn't produce a lot of insulin actually. So there is something to this, yeah. And now you're wondering to yourself, it's like, how do I eat a low carb diet? It's like I've been depending on carbs my entire life. I've been eating rice since I was born. Trust me, we're Chinese, we know that. So going without
I
rice,
used to
it's
eat
it's
a crap
yeah,
ton of rice, man.
yeah, and maybe a lot of people can still sort of relate to this. So what you can see in this infographic here is this number is per 100. So that's like when you look at rice, that's 28 grams of carbohydrates per 100. So easy, just think of it as 28%, pasta 29%, and holy hell, bread is like 46%, right? So when you're eating these stuff, right, it's making you retain fats and actually gain weight and retain your fats. And even look at this, even like fresh juices is no exception. When you're juicing like oranges, or when you're juicing like apple without the pulp, you're drinking pure sugar. This is what it is actually.
Drinking fructose. Man, I
Yes,
was doing that last time. That's crazy.
yeah. So we've heard of juicing diets. It just scares us, man. It's crazy. And don't do juicing, seriously. When you want to lose weight, because just to talk about this briefly, the sugar in fruits is called fructose, and fructose is independently being processed by your liver, and your liver also processes fats. So if you're giving your body a lot of fruits, a lot of juices, you're overwhelming your liver, so it's not able to handle processing fats or fat loss in your body when it's dealing with all this fructose. So avoid juices and fruits whenever possible, especially if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to cut fat, avoid that. All right, so we're getting into this as well, which is like the next slide. Okay, you're thinking to yourself, I can't eat like rice and I can't eat like noodles. What else am I gonna eat? Can I eat fruits? So when you look at this actually, so nearer to this side is less carbs, and then after that, nearer to this side is more carbs. So if you look at bananas, it has a ton of carbs. So we will strongly advise people to avoid this. But if you looked at here, coconut is actually one of the healthier ones, and lemon is fine as well. But once again, if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to cut fat, it's advisable to just avoid fruits altogether because it's still considered carbs. Now this is where it gets interesting. So we talked about that chart. I want to help you remind you of that chart that you were looking at, like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And here we go towards like condiments and also cooking oils. And this is where it gets very interesting. Look at butter. Butter has 0 grams of carbs. So when you're eating butter, it almost completely doesn't incite an insulin reaction, and it doesn't cause your body to store fats. And look at mayonnaise as well, 1 gram, and even heavy creams, 3 grams. So it's very, very low in carbohydrates. It's to the point where it's negligible. And olive oil as well, very healthy. And we recommend cooking with coconut oil as well. So, but you look at here, some other condiments like ketchup, there's a lot of added sugars in here, so it's not so good. So, and me and SP actually, we've been like eating foods that are like cooked in butter, and we eat foods that are cooked in coconut oil, and just one of the things is it tastes so great, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, it's a dream.
Yeah. So the plus side of eating like butter or like all this, we are living proof that it doesn't make you gain fat. In fact, when we applied this, we actually lost a bunch of weight and a bunch of fats actually.
And you feel satisfied, right? It doesn't feel restrictive. A lot of people,
Yeah.
when they go on diets, right? The part of the reason why is like, screw this, like I can't do this anymore. And then after that, they go back to their old ways, right? Because they're not satiated or satisfied, basically, right?
Mhm.
But when you eat fats, right, it's highly satiating, which means you will be satisfied. You won't have any cravings and things like that, because you can, food that's like cooked in butter, it's freaking awesome.
Do you
Eating
still
all the heavy cream and the cream cheese is like it's brilliant, man.
Yeah, I mean like you guys should just look into our Instagram and see the kind of stuff that we're coming up with.
Ooh,
And you can even eat like desserts and things like that. So
yeah, like no sugar desserts, right? So it's like,
yeah,
what else do you
yeah.
really need? We even make ice cream, right? Which doesn't make you fat.
Yeah, yeah. And like after like for yourself when you eat lunch, do you feel the urge or any like craving to actually snack in between, like before you reach dinner, like for
Well,
yourself?
I used to do that, but nowadays no, because you just adapt yourself to once you know the science behind it, right? You know it's not good to snack. Obviously, when you're used, let's say if you're used to snacking a lot before, you obviously have to break that habit. It's just a bad habit. And knowing the science behind it, right, just helps you break that bad habit, or at least it helps for us. I don't know. I
Mm,
can't speak for anyone else, but if you know it's bad for you, and then after that you try to break it, right, then after that becomes your new norm. You don't snack all the time. Because I used
mm.
to snack like hell, like 9 times, and it just like,
Oh,
what the heck is
and
that's a bit
just
insane.
bringing our listeners back to that chart just now, how protein actually incites an insulin reaction, right?
Yeah, well, what if you snack on carbs, which most people do, like chocolate bars and things like that? That's even worse. That's just gonna
Yeah.
spike your insulin and make you even more insulin resistance, like adding to the problem. And you're wondering, whoa, why am I not losing weight? Well, your insulin's out of whack. That's the reason why you're not losing weight, actually. Because if you calorie restrict, right, obviously you're gonna lose weight, but can you sustain it? That's the big problem. Because we have went on a low carb, low fat diet, it always rebounds because it screws up your metabolism over the long run. And when you try to apply the same thing again, you're gonna be very surprised actually as to why it doesn't work actually.
Mm.
Right. So to answer your question, I don't feel the need to snack actually. Like between meals, like right now we've been experimenting with OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, meaning we fast like close to 24 hours. So we just eat 1 meal a day. And yeah, okay, fine. Sometimes you do feel hungry, but it passes, right? And you don't feel the need to do it actually. So maybe
Mm.
we'll cover that in a future episode. That's a bit more advanced.
What? Not eating for 24 hours? I know that sounds
Uh,
very crazy.
it did to
Trust
us, man.
me.
I mean, it was
Try,
like
yeah.
very daunting to
I
us as
mean,
well. I never
we
thought.
are absolute foodies, and you're telling us not to eat for like 24 hours. Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't believe it as well. And this goes back to what SP was saying just now about how there's periods of feeding, there's periods of fasting. So, but we'll talk about that in the future video.
Yeah, it's just not
And
natural for humans to eat all the time.
yeah, yeah, I think just going back as well, what you're saying is very interesting because diet is very important because if you're eating like you said, like a bland diet, we've heard of people eat going on the no SOS diet. That's like the no salt, oil, or sugar diet. I mean, I don't know what that tastes like. I've never tried it, but if you ask my mom, to cook without oil and salt, and she will ask us to go screw ourselves.
What am I supposed to? What am I supposed to make my food taste like healthy? Actually, well,
Yeah,
the only thing I agree to in the SOS, right, is actually one of the S's, which is sugar. That's the only thing I can agree to, right?
yeah.
Salt is not bad. Maybe we'll cover that in another episode. It's not the
So much
culprit,
to talk about.
right? And then oil, like we talked about just now, as long as you're eating healthy oil, is not a problem,
Mm,
right? As long as you don't go eat KFC, McDonald's, none of that fried crap, actually,
yeah.
right? Those are bad, right? So the one thing about one caveat on the no SOS diet, right? It didn't say anything about carbs actually. So
Yeah,
technically,
yeah,
right,
you're
if you're
right.
on the no SOS diet, right, technically you're still eating carbs, right? Which converts into sugar. So a lot of people don't understand that, yeah? So
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
it doesn't matter what kind of carbs you eat. You say, "Oh, I'm eating like wholemeal bread, brown rice, low GI stuff." It doesn't matter. Carb is carb. It converts into sugar. It's just how fast it converts into sugar.
That's right.
You eat the same amount of calories, it's the same amount of sugar, man.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I think I
It's
always
just
want
not
to.
sustainable. Are you
Yeah, yeah.
crazy? It's
th-
like
That's the word, sustainable, isn't it? Because
there is no doubt that that way of eating is probably effective at losing weight, but it's not sustainable. So what is the point if you lose the weight and it comes back later on?
yeah,
There's no point. It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of energy, and I'd rather have my food.
yeah. And going back to sustainability, when you find a diet that's easy to adhere to, like when you're eating like delicious foods like cooking your food in butter, is actually very healthy because like butter has a very high smoking point, so it doesn't make the oil rancid. It's very healthy. It's safe. It's for like newbies that can cook with butter as well. It doesn't matter if you use extremely high heat. You're not gonna ruin the oil. So it's all about adherence when it comes to food. So what we found out is only until recently, we found something that really worked for us and something that we can adhere to like for an infinite amount of time. Like you never need to go off this diet because we never like to use the term diet because diet sounds like such a temporary thing. So you
Well,
want to find something
essentially
that
it
works for
is.
you.
Essentially it is. For most people, right? Almost for everybody, when you say diet, right? It's like, oh, okay, I gained so much weight, and now I need to go on the diet. No,
Yeah,
it's a temporary thing, right? Then after that, it's just a cycle, right? Your weight drops, your weight gains, your weight drops, your weight gains. That's crazy. It's doing
yeah.
bad things to your body. It's messing with your metabolism, and you'll find it harder and harder to lose weight in the future when that happens, and you damage your organs,
Mm.
right? So that's the thing actually that you gotta be careful about.
You know what? There's so much to talk about, and unfortunately, we've really run out of time for this episode. Um, we really want to talk about so much more, actually. So there's so much still to cover. We'll leave it for like future episodes. So for the time being, make sure you subscribe to us. And whatever you hear on our show, remember, I just want to remind you that we're not health experts. We're not like dietitians. We're not like doctors. So whatever you hear from us and whatever you want to apply, make sure you consult with your doctors first as well. So just do your own research, I would recommend, and start with whatever knowledge that you get from us here today and just expand on it. And whatever you discover, you can leave a comment actually down on the comment section and tell us actually what you found and tell us also what you would like to hear in future episodes of our podcast. And make sure you subscribe to us once again and also follow us on Instagram. That's where we update very regularly, which is like Healthtastic Official, Healthtastic.official on Instagram. And I've been Dennis. You can follow me on Instagram. It says right here, d.lim_photo. And also you can follow SP at spas84 on Instagram. So before we log off, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, just leave us a comment, leave us a like if you like this, share it with people. And you know what? Since like just to bring back what Dennis says, we welcome the challenges actually because we are by no means expert. So for us, we like getting challenged as long as you bring us the scientific proof. Everything
Yeah.
needs to be backed up scientifically, right? Do your research. I mean, don't take anything at face value, even when it comes from an expert. Always challenge. When an expert tells you something and it doesn't work right, it's like, okay, so is he wrong? Is he right? Is he an expert? It's like, do your own research.
Yeah, question
Find
everything.
out for find out for yourself. If something is not working right, if somebody tells you, oh, do this and it's not working right, change. That's what happened to us. We went to look for the answers.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so that's been our podcast, Healthtastic Experience. So Dennis signing off and SP signing off. So till then, stay healthtastic, everyone.